Before he'd even graduated high school, Alan Adham knew he wanted to make video games. It was Southern California in the 1980s, and gaming was morphing from a curious pastime into a lucrative business. Arcades were booming, cheap home computers like the Commodore 64 were becoming living room centerpieces, and the song Pac-Man Fever was cresting to number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. During lunch breaks, Adham would head to his local arcade and blast through aliens in games like Asteroids and Space Invaders. At home, he and his brother convinced their dad to buy an Apple II computer, which Adham could use both to play games and to create them. Born Ayman Adham to Egyptian parents, an engineer and a preschool administrator, he grew obsessed with the way video games functioned and how they made people feel. He'd talk about how gaming would be the new form of entertainment, synonymous with movies and stuff like that, said a college friend. I thought he was smoking dope. To Adham, interactivity made video games capable of evoking an unparalleled adrenaline rush. Instead of just watching something happen, you could actually feel it play out. Through a high school friend, he met Brian Fargo, a charismatic, slightly older programmer who was actually paid to make video games, an absurd concept at the time, for a company called Boone. Fargo, recognizing a smart, ambitious teenager, recruited Adham to do playtesting. He always seemed like a really sharp kid, but he didn't act like a kid, said Fargo. In 1983, Fargo and a small group of colleagues left Boone to form a startup called Interplay Productions, and soon they were making waves in the industry with games like The Bard's Tale, a fantasy adventure inspired by Fargo's Dungeons & Dragons campaigns. Adham looked at Interplay with admiration and a little envy, wondering if he too could one day start his own company. He kept working with Fargo during the summers as he began attending the University of California, Los Angeles, with hopes of one day making video games that millions of people would play. During his sophomore year at UCLA, Adham designed and programmed his first game, Gunslinger, a rudimentary graphical text adventure set in the Wild West. A small company called Datasoft printed the game and distributed it to stores, where prospective buyers had no idea it had been coded by someone who wasn't yet old enough to legally drink. Gunslinger didn't get much attention, but to Adham it was proof that he could finish and release a video game of his own, a feat about which he bragged to anyone who would listen. One day at the UCLA computer lab, Adham took a seat next to a skinny, curly-haired student named Mike Morheim. The two men, both bookish and soft-spoken, had shared some classes but hadn't talked much. Adham stepped out of the room, locking his computer before he left. When the computer timed out and unlocked itself a few minutes later, Morheim decided to prank his seatmate, swinging over and typing in his own password to relock the device. Adham returned, clacked a few letters on the keyboard, and somehow unlocked the computer. Morheim, stunned, asked Adham just how the heck he'd pulled that off. It turned out the two young computer geeks had both used the same simple password, Joe, a meet-cute that sparked a lasting friendship. Morheim, too, obsessed over video games. As a kid, he was fascinated by the insides of machinery. Radios, televisions, microwaves. Whenever his family would get new electronics, he'd ignore the hardware and instead pore over the manual, curious to know the exact purpose of each port on the back of the VCR. In middle school, he and his siblings pooled together their savings to buy the Bally Astrocade, a game system that included a cartridge with the BASIC programming language on it, allowing Morheim to write simple software and slowly figure out how games functioned. The jolt of excitement from taking things apart and reassembling them pushed him to study electrical engineering at UCLA, where he sat in the front row of every class, asking questions and trying to absorb as much as possible. Their class of programmers was in the hundreds, but Morheim was among the few who stood out to Adham as the best of the best, the ones who would finish their assignments early and then invent challenges for one another, battling over who could code a successful program in the fewest lines. Adham thought this fellow software-obsessed geek could be the perfect partner for the grand plan he had been formulating to make the best video game company in the world. As the two men made their way through college in the late 1980s, the video game industry expanded at a rapid pace. The Nintendo Entertainment System, released in 1987, led to groundbreaking games like Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda. Video games were growing more complex and more lucrative every year. Adham's old pals at Interplay were so successful at making their own games, they also began funding and publishing other companies' titles. In 1990, as Adham was finishing his degree, he suggested to Morheim that they team up and start a video game company. But Morheim, who had graduated a few months earlier, was reluctant. He'd snagged a job writing test software at Western Digital, a stable computer technology company that offered him a salary and benefits with little risk, and he specialized in hardware, not video game development.